Hi everyone, it's Vu here. So I dropped out of college when I was just 18 years old, and I got my first job as a programmer when I was also just 18 years old. Today I work as a senior engineering manager for Snapchat. So in this video, I'll be talking about 9 steps that you can take or consider if you want to pursue the same path. Step number 1, be realistic. If you're watching this video and thinking that it's going to be super easy just to learn programming by yourself and then get a $100,000 paying job as a programmer, I hate to break it to you, but it's going to be really, really hard. There's really no easy steps to go about this. Me, myself, I dropped out of college not because I thought it was the cool thing to do or because I was like too smart or anything like that. Actually, the very opposite thing was true. I dropped out of college because I was not accepted into my computer science program at my university. When I applied, my grades were too low and they told me, try again next year. I didn't want to wait an entire year. I didn't know what I wanted to study other than, computer science at that time. In order to actually learn, I had to learn by myself. And then through learning by myself, I was able to get a job as a programmer. When you don't have a degree, it's going to be like riding a bike uphill or a fish swimming upstream. What I'm trying to say is that it's going to be pretty hard. It's not the conventional way for a reason. Most people aren't going to be successful at this. And just because you can program, you're going to be pretty scrutinized when it comes to getting your first job. A lot of people might look at your resume and then wonder, where your education is. And if you don't have very solid skills to back it up, it's going to be very difficult. Also know that within this journey, you're probably going to get rejected a lot. And I mean like a lot. I'll touch on it a little bit more, but me, myself, when I was looking for my first job, I probably had around 14 or 15 interviews, and I got rejected by basically every single tech company out there. It was so bad. It was so humiliating. It felt terrible. You're going to probably feel terrible. And if you don't throughout this process at one point, then you might be the lucky one. The point I'm trying to make is there's going to be a lot of downsides and there's going to be a lot of pain when you compare it to the more traditional route of going through a 4-year degree. So you might be asking, like, why do I even want to do this at all? Well, a lot of this video is made for people that might not be in super fortunate situations, There's a lot of people out there that can't afford a 4-year degree. And with everything online, there's so many resources just to learn how to program. And actually, programming is one of those few careers where you don't actually need a degree to succeed. Other people too, maybe they find themselves in a situation where maybe they have to drop out of college to take care of a parent or a grandparent, or potentially, maybe they just don't have time in their lives. Maybe they have already a career and they want to switch paths. What I'm trying to say is, there's a lot of good reasons to want to learn how to program by yourself and not necessarily go through a college, but you got to find the right intrinsic reasons that you want to do it. If you just want to do it to make a quick buck or thinking that's going to be easy, you're probably doing yourself a disservice. So in summary, it's going to be hard. The sooner you're able to recognize that and accept that and understand that, the more successful you're going to be in the future. Step number 2, do your research. You should generally have some sort of idea of what kind of programmer you want to be. The general concept is whenever you're starting something new or you're embarking on some sort of journey, you don't want to just YOLO it or yeet it or whatever the kids say nowadays. You don't want to just do that. Having a really clear picture in your head of where you want to go, what place you want to work at, is going to help you answer a bunch of questions that you're going to need to answer in the future. Things like, should I learn JavaScript / TypeScript or like Swift or Android? If you know what things you like and you enjoy and the general focus, you can answer a lot of these questions that can be roadblockers. And a really focused pursuit in something is only going to allow you to get to your goal much faster. Programming itself is a very large spectrum of disciplines, right? So let's say that you wanted to study art, right? There's a bunch of different type of art. There's like sculptures, or maybe you're painting, or maybe it's like 2D modeling, or pottery. The same thing which is in programming, right? So programming isn't just one narrow band. There's so much. So do you want to work on servers to work on the back end? Do you want to work on the front end? And then if you want to work on the front end, do you want to work on, a desktop, or do you want to work on web, or do you want to work on mobile? And if you're on mobile, do you want to work on iOS or Android? So the decision tree of what programming is pretty deep. One thing I'd suggest you doing is to just look inward and try to understand the things that you already intrinsically like, and seeing if you can find a connection with coding that goes in parallel with that. Let me give you an example. Maybe you already like, playing on your phone for hours on end. Maybe that could be a good indication that you want to be a mobile developer. Or maybe you follow Elon Musk on Twitter and like the crazy things that he says, and you want to program, self-driving cars. Maybe then you'll become a machine learning programmer. Or maybe you like SpaceX. Maybe you want to be like a embedded systems engineer, So that's what I'm trying to say. And it doesn't even have to be things related to tech, right? So maybe you really like photography, you really like working in, Photoshop, and, one of these days you want to work at Adobe making these sort of softwares, or you want to learn how they work, If you focus your goals on your intrinsic values, you're going to be able to find motivation when times get really tough. So, think about what motivates you, do your research, try to understand what kind of programmer you want to be, what kind of company you want to work at, and that's only going to allow you to be hyper-focused in this pursuit. Step number 3 is to start dabbling. So what I mean by dabbling is start coding, actually. There's a bunch of online resources out there that make programming kind of fun and kind of interactive that I think is totally worthwhile to explore. There are a bunch of these fun, interactive programming websites out there. You probably know some of them, and I'll link them in the description below, but these are websites such as Code Academy, Treehouse. I'm not sponsored by them anyway. If you want to sponsor it, hit me up. I've used them myself, and I find them pretty fun. And what I would recommend is you don't actually, pay for the service, but a lot of them allow you to do free trials. And what you should try to do is, I think some of the trials are like a week, or maybe it's like 2 weeks. Just whatever you can do to free up your time for like a week, so where you can really binge and then really try and go for it. Your intent should be, trying to explore programming and trying to think like a programmer, trying to write code and seeing do you derive value and energy and good feelings from this, right? As a programmer myself, the reason why I love programming is I just like creating, I like solving problems. I like writing something and then making things happen. Those things light up in my brain, and hopefully, by dabbling in programming on Code Academy and in websites like that, you can learn for yourself too whether or not this actually motivates you deep inside. What you don't want is to quit your job and say, I'm going to learn programming, and then join an expensive dev bootcamp and then realize, hey, this isn't for me, right? So spend some time, dabble on it, learn, and try to see if this is actually interesting to you. Step number 4 is to actually commit to an area and start learning, right? So after the previous step of dabbling, you should already know that, hey, I'm in it. I want to do this. I want to become a programmer, right? So this step is really just to, solidify that commitment and understand what focus area you want to spend your energy on, so then you can find the right resources for you to learn. I'm going to do a video about this more in depth because it is so unbelievably detailed. There's so many programming languages out there, but I think the way that you should kind of think about it is, there's 2 kind of large, broad subjects, right, that you kind of need to learn. One, you need to learn a programming language. And then 2, you probably want to learn a programming framework that goes with that language, right? Let me give you an example. Let's say you want to work on web apps, right? The most popular web framework out there is React, and typically how you write React is with TypeScript. TypeScript is a subset of JavaScript. It's not super important, but it's TypeScript and JavaScript. Okay, all right. Let's say you want to work on iOS, right? The most popular framework out there is probably Cocoa Touch UI Kit, right? You also have Swift UI out there, not as popular, right? So how you code that is probably through Swift. That's the most popular programming language to implement UI Kit, right? Alternatively, you can learn Objective-C, right? And it keeps on going on and on and on. Like if you want to work on Android, then maybe you learn Kotlin, the language, and then the framework is Android SDK, right? So where you should be here is you should try to understand what stack I want to work on. So answer the simple questions like, do I want to work on, back-end, mobile, or like embedded server kind of stuff like that, right? Again, this is like just a touch of an overview. I'm going to make another probably really long video just to explain these sort of things. Step number 5 is to get serious and to get disciplined. If this was easy, like everybody would do it, quite frankly, right? And you cannot expect to learn something so difficult without setting some disciplines and some healthy habits for yourself, right? So you really gotta make sure that you're setting a consistent schedule for yourself to learn every single day. In game development, there's this mentality, it's called like no zero days. And what that means is like every single day, it's never a zero. Every single day, you gotta make like some progress. You gotta, watch another video, go through another tutorial, apply some of your knowledge. If you don't get disciplined and then set yourself up a schedule that you can personally adhere to, that you can keep yourself accountable to, then it's gonna be really hard to learn, because a lot of learning comes from consistency, repetition, and practice. Another part of this is to learn how you best learn, right? So what I mean by that is, for example, I'm a very, visual learner. I really like learning through YouTube videos, for example. So when I actually first learned how to program, I was watching mostly YouTube videos. Other people, they really like, learning through text and reading. So they just pick up textbooks and start reading them. That's not me. But you should learn how best you learn and then go about doing that, right? And part of learning is trying to make it fun for yourself, right? So for me, the YouTube videos that I personally really enjoyed were very comical. They weren't very serious at all, and they weren't the best computer science resources. Like they didn't teach you the absolute best practices, and some of it was wrong. But because it was fun for me, I was able to learn every single day, and that's like really the most important part. Find something that you enjoy and then try to do that every single day. Step number 6 is to open source your projects. So when you apply for a job, you're not going to have a degree. So you have to have a portfolio that is built up in order to show that you're actually competent and know what you're doing, right? So part of that is starting to open source and putting things on GitHub. GitHub is probably the most commonly used repository for Git that exists for open source. So what I would start doing is starting to think about projects that you can do on your side in order to push them up and get reviews from them. How I would suggest creating projects for you to push is to, again, try to link programming to the things that you are intrinsically motivated by, the things that you already enjoy, right? So, for example, let's say that you are a musician on the side and you just really love music. And maybe something that you can do is maybe you can build some sort of AI or some sort of tool for musicians. Maybe it can be an AI that makes music for you. Or, for example, maybe you really like geography. You can use Mapbox. You can go to mapbox.com, I think that's what it's called, and then they have an API where you can create a map. You can style it. You can do really cool things. Maybe, you really like trails and hiking, or really like swimming, and then you want to plot like the swimming lines and where they go and like where the trail, The important thing here is to be creative. The world is your oyster. As a programmer, you are a creator. You are a builder. So build projects that you genuinely care about, that you want to see in the world. Push them to GitHub. Let other people see it. Your code will probably suck. Let's be frank here, but you got to get yourself out there. You got to start building that portfolio. Step number 7 is to find a mentor. Now you might be wondering why I put, number 7 so far here. Maybe it should be number 2 or number 3. Well, I think that it's actually kind of hard to find a genuine mentor unless you put in the effort yourself. Again, I talk about this a lot on my YouTube channel, but there's no such thing as a silver bullet. You're not going to find some sort of Prince Charming where if you just find this person, they're going to teach you everything there is to know. Maybe Prince Charming was a bad example of it. Maybe Yoda, like you're the Padawan, whatever, right? That person probably doesn't exist. To further the Star Wars analogy here, young Obi-Wan wouldn't have found young Anakin if Anakin didn't already have some promise, already have some potential. You got to demonstrate your potential before a mentor can help you. That being said, though, mentorship is really a big key component in programming in general. I think most programmers out there, and you ask anybody, you ask them, who was your mentor? And then each one will probably be able to give the first name, their last name, and then tell them exact moments how they influence or help shape the course of their career or even their life, People rely on mentors a lot in programming. And the good thing about that is that it's already built within the culture, already in the ethos of programming. So if you want to find a mentor, there exists somebody out there that is just willing to help you out of the goodness of their own heart. And all you need to do is just work hard and then already show promise. Show them your GitHub portfolio that is probably really bad, and just ask them like, hey, can you take 20 minutes of your time, review my project structure, give me some feedback, and I'm sure they will. Once you ask for that initial help and they help you, they're invested. They want you to succeed. But you really got to do the first, 6 steps or whatever it was in order to get to a position where they can help you. Step number 8, prepare for interviews. So we're already at this point where you're going to be interviewing. Yeah, I know we got through that really fast, all the way from be realistic and then now you're interviewing. But this is where step number 2 really comes in handy here. Hopefully you should have already done your research. You should already know like what kind of programmer you want to be, and hopefully you should already know like what kind of companies you want to be working at. Is it a large company like Facebook? Is it like Google? Or is it more of like a middle tier kind of company like Spotify? Or I'm sorry if you're watching this, people from Spotify. I'm not sure if you're actually middle tier, but you know what I mean. Or potentially you just want to work at like a smaller company, maybe a startup, And knowing that will allow you to really focus on what kind of interview prep you have to do, right? For example, and again, this is a huge topic. I'm going to talk about it more in a future video. But for example, if you want to work at Facebook, then one bit of interview prep that you should be doing is going to leetcode.com. This is actually probably good practice in general. I personally really I really hate algorithm questions in interviews in general, but I think it does have a sort of place in the world. Step number 9, and my last thing that I will be parting with you is that be prepared to keep on trying. Be prepared for failure. It's going to be really hard, I'm telling you, coming from myself. There were so many times that I just wanted to quit. I remember the first day that I learned how to program. I was learning C++, I know it was actually C#, and I forgot like a semicolon, and I spent like hours debugging just because I didn't know what I was doing. It was so frustrating, and I wanted to quit. There's so many times I wanted to just give up from my first rejection. I remember going through interviews and just feeling so humiliating, thinking that, I wasted all my time. I'm never going to be able to succeed. I'm a joke. I'm a fraud. All of that, right? Even when I got my first job, it was really difficult for me because, having learned programming yourself, there's a lot of holes in your knowledge. And my first job, I really struggled. There were times where I'm a phony. How did I manage to land this job? The thing is, and as I said in number 1, and I will close with this, going down this path is difficult. There are probably easier ways to become a programmer than to try to do it yourself. Some of those methods are unattainable, and I understand that, and this is why I'm making this video. But as long as you can anchor yourself on realistic outcomes, prepare for this really long journey, anchor yourself on intrinsic values, the things that motivate you, to remind yourself in hard times why you're doing this. If you keep on putting in the hours, trying to get better over time, you will be able to do this. You will be able to get a job. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of effort. It's totally within the realm of your own success. So anyways, those were all the steps I have in order to get a job without any experience or by dropping out of college. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button or subscribe. I know I hate saying that every single time, but hopefully this content can help some other people. So if you find it helpful yourself, if you have any comments, I'm happy to answer all your comments out there. Thank you.